The sun is the primary source of light for the Earth. About 44% of the sun's light reaches the Earth, and that's what we call visible light, which is electromagnetic radiation. But today, we'd like to talk to you about a different type of light, a spiritual light that we'd like to discuss with you in a few episodes here on our new series on ABN called Light and Darkness. And our first episode today is called How Can the Light Be Seen? That's the question that we'll be discussing. We'll get right into it. Bassem, that's the first question that I want to ask you in general for our audience. How can we begin to tackle this question or ask this question? How can spiritual light be seen?
Good. Well, first of all, Summer, the spiritual light is God. God is light. And Jesus said, I am the light of the world. And your question, I can reform it in a different words, is how can God be seen? Or how can we see Jesus? So you are talking about spiritual eyes and not physical eyes. This question is big. There are some conditions we can see, some other conditions we are not allowed to see.
So we need to have a separate pair of eyes to even begin to tackle this question.
Right. It's not physical eyes.
Okay.
Okay. It is the spiritual eyes. Where are the spiritual eyes? Are they in the hand, at the back of the head, in the heart? That's another question.
Okay, so then if we need a pair of spiritual eyes to be able to see the light or to see God or to even begin to ask that sort of a question, how do we obtain these spiritual eyes to ask that question?
Well, there are 4 or 5 demands or conditions to obtain them. Number 1 is willingness. If I am not willing to see God, I will never ever be able to have those couple of eyes. Number 2, humility. If I am full of pride, God will oppose me. He will not give that because God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. Another thing is it's about making decision. If I am ready to make a decision, then I will obtain those couple of eyes. And I'm going to say the 4th one and stop here. The 4th one is believing and by having faith. If I have faith or I start asking God to give me faith so that I will be able to see Him, God will respect that belief, that faith, and He will tell me, Bassem, this is a gift for you. Now you can see me.
So you're saying that faith is a big factor in the first step because there's different steps, right, to be able to get to where we need to go. So if faith is a big factor, somebody in this generation, young adult in America, what is the first step to having faith to be able to see God?
Yes. The first stumbling block is he or she willing or not? They can go to universities, they can go studies, they could become scientists, okay, and they could create microscopes. But if they are not willing, then there's no need to try. Number 1 is willing. Number 2 is to ask God, I am blind spiritually. What must I do? God will answer, and they will tell them exactly where is he stuck.
And how does one determine that he or she is blind?
They cannot, because anyone who is in darkness, he does not know that he's in darkness. And that's why the teachers of the law and the Pharisees and Caiaphas, they thought that they represent God, and Jesus was a blasphemer, was from Satan, and doing miracles by evil power.
Okay, so then if they themselves don't see that they are filled with darkness, so then how do they get to that point? Is it the people with light, or?
It is a miracle to have a spiritual eyes and to believe in God and to see the power of God. It has to come from God, not from them. It's all from God. He start, He finish. He created, He will end it. The only thing is we have to humble ourselves and not to oppose God.
So it's more steps on our end as a sign of surrender to
That's it.
God,
Obedience.
and then we sort of surrender to Him for His power to.
Yes. I cannot
our
prove
lives.
to you that God exists. Nobody could prove to me God exists.
With
But I
physical
have
eyes.
to come by faith. Once I accept Him by faith, then God, He will do all the miracles. He will open my eyes. He will give me spiritual eyes. He will broken my heart. He will crush my pride. He will do everything for me.
Now you're saying no one can prove that God exists, just as a side note, from the physical realm, from physical measurement tools, you're saying, right?
From physical, from medical, from statistics, all these are nothing.
Okay, all right. Did you have anything else to summarize on this question? I know it's a long series that we're going to be tackling a lot of questions, but how can the light be seen? Any final comments?
The only thing is we have to admit that we are living in darkness. We have to admit that we are disobedience to Him. We have broken His laws. And there is something inside us God has put, which is conscience. Our conscience tells us that we are opposing Him. If we admit and say sorry, then the whole process is going to be very simple and easy.
And I would also just ask for people in my generation that, and we'll end the show, is that to ask ourselves what we're chasing after. If we're chasing after the things of this world, if we're chasing after materialism, if we're chasing after things that are not causing us to be satisfied, and we're continually doing it, we're going down this path that's continually being unsatisfactory in our lives, then we should really stop, pause, think, separate ourselves from the noise of this world and ask the question, why is that happening? Was I made for another world? Was I made for this world? If I was made for this world, if I'm chasing the right things, why is there a sense of unsettlement within me, going back to the conscience? And so those type of questions might be good for us to ask.
Yes, and finally, God loves all of us. He created us to be His friends so that in eternity we will have a great time with Him, He with us. But what happened is we disobeyed, and that disobedience separated us, and that's why we are in darkness. But it doesn't matter. God, He knew that we are in darkness, but He wants us to give us light. The question is, are we willing?
Are we willing? Very good question. Thank you for joining me. Thank you to our audience for joining us. Again, how can the light be seen? The first episode on this new series on ABN.